I'd like to invite our panelists up to these chairs, and some of our panelists are going to be online. Kara is going to help moderate, and we're going to have some introductions so you know who everybody is. Thanks for being here. Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. We invited people to have another panel discussion because the ones in the past have been really helpful. And some of us have been part of this community for a long time, but many of us, whether it's in the sanctuary or online, are newer. And people always give good feedback about what it's like to get to know people a little better. So this is one way we want to do this today. So we're excited. We thank you for volunteering. And just one thing we want to note is that we're going to be speaking into the handhelds. I'm going to ask Care to interrupt us if we're not audible. We want to make sure that everybody can hear what we have to say. So feel free to let us know if it's not coming through clearly. And again, thanks for being here. So I want to start off just with introductions. I'll invite you to introduce yourself with your name and your pronouns. And if there's something else you want to share that helps people know a little bit about you, feel free to do that or not. So we will get started. Care, why don't you kick us off, and Ruth, and then we'll go to the people here in the sanctuary.
Sure. So I think I'm just kind of a support person because you hear my voice a lot, but I'm Care Messner and I use he, him pronouns, and I'm going to pass it to Ruth.
Hi, I'm Ruth. And I use she, her, and I'm happy to speak with you today.
Good morning. My name is Sandy West, and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm very happy to be here today. I think these questions that are being asked are very important, and I hope everyone enjoys the presentation.
Hello, my name's Palmer Williams. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm just really glad to be here in church with the rest of you.
Hi, I'm Karen Clementi, and I use the pronouns she and her. I'm happy to be here too, in dialogue with all of you. And I wanted to add that I've been attending this church since the mid-'90s, so I have a long love, and I cherish this community.
So all the questions that I'm going to ask, we've just invited people to respond to the ones that resonate with them, and they don't need to respond to any that don't. So that's an invitation to all of you. And it might be that you thought there was one that resonated and you changed your mind. That's all good too. And if anybody has any follow-up questions of each other, we should feel free to be conversational in that way.
Priscilla?
Yes.
When you turn your head, we're losing a little bit of your sound.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do better, Care. So my first question is one that I love. It's probably the hardest question. We all get it all the time, which is, how are you? And I added, how are you really? Yeah, I want to hear from people about how they are today, or, yeah, how are you really? I think Ruth would like to get us started with that one.
How are you doing, really? The answers come from a diversity of ancient traditions. I'd like to consider with you 2 points on this topic. The first is self-talk. After listening to a podcast with Sylvia Boorstein, a Jewish Buddhist teacher, on the topic of what we nurture, I was impressed with her loving, warm conversation with family members. And what surprised me was that she turned that same warm, loving conversation inward to herself. Since then, I've been turning this self-talk into a spiritual practice that acknowledges the good things I've done, little things. And here is where acknowledgement quickly becomes gratitude. Gratitude for having that tube of toothpaste handy when I need it. Or, oh, I could make a sandwich out of that with a sweet summer tomato. I try to remember to be loving and warm towards myself by calling me sweetie or sweetheart. The Cherokee share a story that there are two wolves inside you. One is evil, as in anger, envy, or jealousy. The list goes on, but you get the picture. And the other is good, as in joy, peace, love, and so on. The question is, which one will win? The answer is the one you feed. So be kind and gentle with those whom you encounter, especially your loved ones, your children, your parents. But you can't do that unless you are kind and gentle to yourself. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that's not going to go too far if you don't love yourself. Yesterday on NPR, I heard a podcast on how to show up for yourself. There were 10 points. I'm not going to cover them all, but here's a few. First of all, showing up for yourself means taking care of yourself so that your mental and emotional health are supported. What makes you feel good when recounting your day's activities? A hot bath, reading a book, going for a walk? Then make time for these simple pleasures that bring you joy. Practice self-compassion by being kind and understanding towards yourself, even when you make a mistake. Set boundaries by prioritizing your needs. Like me, do you have trouble saying no sometimes? Take time to listen to your intuition, that gut feeling that helps you to make decisions. Some people journal. You don't have to write compositions. Keeping a daily planner helps to sort what needs to be done and what can be done another day. It is also a list of daily accomplishments for which you can be grateful. There are several more points covered in that podcast, but the important thing is to love and nurture your wild and precious self.
I love that, Ruth, and I love your nicknames for yourself. Thanks for that reminder that we should be as kind as possible. Sandy, how are you really?
Initially, I wasn't going to answer this question. I thought, I don't know if I want to really share this. But then I thought about it. And I feel like I'm doing okay. There are days that I feel down. I go with it. I do a lot of, as Ruth said, self-talk. Then I go out into nature, and that's what I love, for a walk. I call a friend, a family member. I say good morning to some stranger that I'm passing by, and a smile. And then I was reading something about Mary Oliver, and since Kip introduced me to Mary Oliver, I have just grown to love her. And I read this. When loneliness comes stalking, go into the fields. Consider the orderliness of the world. Notice something you have never noticed before. And I just have to say, in closing that, the hymns touch me because they were talking about the oceans and the mountains, and I go, yeah, that's what I love.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Anybody else want to answer that question, or should we move on to the next juicy question? I think we'll move on to the next one. So the next question I have is, what are you learning about self-trust? We talked a little bit about self-talk, but I'm also wondering what you think or have learned or are learning about self-trust. Palmer.
Hi. Well, I actually have a story for this. Well, when I was when I was learning about this panel board with my mom, I wanted to do it, but I was kind of nervous that I would, well, not know what to say, and feel like even when other people were talking that I wouldn't know, they would feel more professional than me. So, but kind of, I think that's, well, kind of, you have, and also getting nervous on the panel. But I feel like it's, I feel like, well, that you, I know. So I have to feel, you have to think from sometimes that other person's point of view, that they might be as nervous as you. And you have to realize that no one's trying to root against you. Everyone's part of the same community, of the same church, and everyone wants to see you succeed. And I feel like that outward helps you trust yourself on the inside.
Palmer, it's such a good point that remembering that we all get nervous, but sometimes it feels like we're the only one. So it's such an act of self-trust for you to say, I'm nervous about doing this. Other people might sound more professional, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to trust myself. So we're so glad that you did that. Yeah. And anybody else want to speak to that particular topic of self-trust? Okay. The next question that we want to talk about is, what have you learned about chosen family and building a circle of support? Yeah, I'm interested to learn more about how people think of that.
Yeah, this was the one question that did resonate with me because, and also Palmer, I want to thank you for sharing that because I was nervous too. So thank you. Yeah, I could recount numerous experiences here, but there are many times when things would happen in our family and we would share that with our friends in church, and they would just be there for us. They would come, show up at the house, friends here and the pastors too. And so I do feel like no matter what happens, and I tell this to the kids who've sort of fallen away from regular church attendance, and I say, you know, whatever happens, this church is going to be there for you. And so that's the way I felt. So that's chosen family, and it means the world.
Anybody else want to speak to your outlook on chosen family or friendship and what you've learned about it? I think Ruth.
I'm finding at this point in my life that the chosen family, which means friends, I consider dear friends my chosen family, things are changing. And maybe younger people think, oh, everything's all locked up when you're an adult and you just go with that and tunnel and you're fine. But things are changing, and I find that I have to change with them and looking around and making new friends and exploring who can I in my inner self trust and embrace trust. And life goes on and it doesn't stop. It just kind of bubbles along.
Yeah, Sandy's going to respond. Thank you, Ruth.
I got a text from someone the other day, and she was saying, you know, our friends are our chosen family, and we all have stories, and that's what I love in life. We share these stories together, and we find what we have in common, and we have these aha moments. You know, you feel the same way I do, or that scares you, and you're looking at someone, you think they're all together and all that. So just sharing and being open and having those aha moments in this life is important.
Yeah, thank you both. Ruth, what you said made me think about how sometimes our friends or chosen family, sometimes they're with us for a lifetime ever since we meet them, and they journey with us the whole way. And sometimes they're with us for a season, and you were talking about trying to be open to the new people that might be part of your journey for this season. So I love that reminder. Yeah, and I think for me, friendship is like all about, people bring out different parts of you, and sometimes you don't even know that there's a part of you that's not even out there fully until you meet the right person and they draw it out of you, so it's pretty exciting. So the next question is, the United Church of Christ, one of their taglines is that God is still speaking. And I think we all feel that more at times and less at times, right? Like any relationship, you feel more or less connected depending on what's going on, and you have to sort of notice that. So I'm wondering for you all, how is God speaking in your life currently?
I like this one. It's like, how is God speaking to me? And God speaks to me each and every day. I just need to quiet the noise in my head. And God speaks to me through poetry. I love poetry now. I didn't years ago, but I'm really hooked. Curiosity in this life. And I love to take photographs. And some people here probably are bombarded with my photographs and going, oh no, not another photograph. But I find that God speaks to me there. And there are 3 things that happened to me that God was right there and loving me. There was the one time when I kissed the baby whale. God was right there in Baja Sur, Mexico. And when I was in Massachusetts recently, I was at the cranberry bog, and there was a dragonfly flying around me and kept coming back. I took a photograph of it, and it kept coming back, and I touched its tail, and I thought, when does that ever happen? And the last thing is, last weekend I was photographing a butterfly, and I was right up on it, and it didn't fly away, and I took some wonderful photograph, and I touched its wing, and that's God in my life.
Great. Anybody else want to speak to how God is speaking into your life in this season?
I have a bit of a story too, I guess. And it really was a big one for me. And I'd been planning this trip to Alaska with my cousin for a year. She came up with the idea of going to Alaska, and I said, oh, it was like electricity in the room. And I called her after she left, and I said, sign me up. And she sent me the information. We signed up. And for the whole year, from July on last year, I would text her different programs coming on and see this about Alaska and that about Alaska. And we were all very excited about it. Her husband had a physical problem, but overcame that so that he could go, but on this cruise, as long as he had a cane. And so in January, I was going through the 120 offerings, excursions, the things you could do in 3 days in Alaska, and weeding through all those. So exciting, and going with Jeannie, my cousin, saying, which ones will we do? And we modified it so that her husband could participate, totally understood that. And then the week before to sail, I called the pastor, and I said, I didn't get into details, and I said, I'm just feeling funny about this trip a little bit. And he said, it's a gift. Okay, got it. It's a gift. That was my mantra. It's a gift. And the very day afterwards, my cousin called and she said she went into the IC unit in the hospital. And she was there for 2-3 days. And yay, she came out, but she was grounded, literally grounded. She was not allowed to go in an airplane. And she was the traveler. She made all of the arrangements. And I was just kind of like the tag along. She was the worldwide traveler. She had done this in her work. This was her shtick. And I'm like, oh no. And then I stepped back a moment and the question came to me, how much do you want to go on this trip? And my answer came back quickly, desperately. So I said, okay, we're going on this trip. And I got my pieces of information together, even though I was umbrellaed under her name to get with the airlines to make sure that they recognized me. And I said to myself, I'm going on this trip. I'm going to go as far as I can go. And if I'm sent back, I'm sent back, but at least I tried to go with this dream. And bit by bit, hurdle by hurdle, I got on the plane. And I said, guess we're going to, well, at least we're going to Vancouver. And then while I was in Vancouver, I was told I had to meet up with her sister-in-law, whom I've never met. So I found the sister-in-law in Vancouver and took a test that was legit, more legit than the ones apparently that we get from the government. But this was like the full deal, this full $75 deal. And I said, okay. And she and her friend helped me through that test. So it was absolutely, they could be monitored for the whole 15 minutes. Perfect. I was negative. I was negative at home, negative in Vancouver. And then the celebrations really started in my life. And I fell into an international jazz festival for free. And then it just took off and it was spectacular. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that question. How much do you want to go on this trip? And my answer.
Yeah, that sounds great, Ruth. I'm glad all those pieces came together for you and that you could feel God's presence in the way that they were unfolding. So the next question is, if sanctuary is defined as a place of refuge or safety, where have you found sanctuary, either currently or in the past?
I feel like for me, sanctuary is less of a place, but it's where the people that I spend time with and the things I do. I draw a lot, and I feel that even when I go on vacations, because a few days ago I was actually on a vacation to the beach, and it was very different, but still, because I was able to draw, I felt like I had sanctuary. And also, with because I was with my family, so I felt more safe at home. And even going back to school, I feel I'm definitely gonna feel more safe because I made friends from last year, and I know them, and hopefully I get most of the same classes with them, and then I know I'll also make new friends.
I love that, Palmer. Palmer's, I feel like you're reminding us that we can be sanctuary within our own selves. That's such a beautiful reminder that we don't have to go to some external thing, but we can carry it with us. So I love that. Yeah. Anybody else want to speak to that? Karen.
Thing about this sanctuary. I really missed this sanctuary when we couldn't come. But there's always one thing, and I might have even shared this with many of you before, is that eye up there. And I tend to sit on this side of I know I've had this conversation with you, Michelle, I think. But I tend to sit here and I look at the eye, and what's interesting to me is, especially when we do the hymn, Here I Am, Lord, and didn't I look in the bulletin today, and here it is. And I just seem to have a connection to that song about, well, what do I do next? And I feel that in this sanctuary.
That's wonderful. Another way that God is speaking. For those who haven't been in the sanctuary, the stained glass, there is an eyeball in one of the stained glass panels that looks at us. So thank you, Karen. Because this turned into an intergenerational conversation, and because we've learned so much from Palmer both today and throughout the years, I'm wondering if anybody has anything they'd like to share about what they wish they knew when they were Palmer's age. Palmer, you're 15, is that right? I'm just wondering if anybody has anything that they wish they had known. And if somebody on the chat wants to put something in, feel free, but I'm wondering if that resonates for anybody on the panel.
One thing that resonates with me is my education about American history. So I think it was severely lacking in race relations, power and privilege, Native Americans. There were things that were just sort of little paragraphs in books that were definitely not inclusive or in depth enough for kids to really understand. So.
I love that reminder of the ways that you have to educate yourself too and fill in the gaps when you recognize that they're there. So thank you for pointing that out. The other thing I would say is that I wish I knew when I was Palmer's age is that it really does get easier, is what I would say. I think a lot of young people look at older people and say, oh, that adulting, maybe it looks hard and not fun, but I don't know, through life experience, you're better equipped to handle everything thrown your way. So I think it gets easier and better. And so not that it's not good for you already, Palmer, but you know what I mean. Does anybody have any closing thoughts or follow-up questions as we draw to a conclusion? Yeah.
I am so impressed by you. I really, really am, and I'm so happy that I'm on this panel with you. So I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, well, let's give our panelists a thank you round of applause. Thank you all for being here.